Good morning. Welcome to our EdgeWave webinar series. Today's topic is reducing the IT cost of email security remediation, an insider's look. Thank you for joining today. Just a couple of housekeeping items. Everyone is on mute until we get to the Q&A session. If you have questions, feel free to ask those questions using the question feature in the webinar, where you can just type in your question and then we'll be able to answer those at the end of the presentation portion today. So let me move forward here. We're talking today about a few things, specifically around phishing, the increase of phishing and the rise of those nasty little phishing emails that you get that turn into potential breaches in your network, in your organization. We're going to touch on that, and then we'll introduce Mesa Systems, Steve Davison, who will talk through with our own Don Lewis around a case study around how he was able to reduce those type of attacks in his organization, some of the pros and cons of security awareness training and some of the IT resource constraints that he has experienced, but how ultimately deploying ThreatTest has helped close that phishing gap. So let me introduce the two speakers today. As I mentioned, Don Lewis, our Senior Marketing Manager, comes with over 15 years of experience, both on the network and security side, and has been a spokesperson in the last several years on the security side, specifically in product management and product marketing. And now Steve Davison, Director of IT at Mesa Systems, spent the last several years on the IT side deploying next-gen technology for his organizations, and has spent several years in the manufacturing and logistics side of the business. So Don, let me take it over.
Thanks, Chu. Appreciate that very much. Welcome. Good morning, everyone. So I'd like to basically start off with a poll question, kind of get your feedback. I'm going to go ahead and publish the poll, but you can read on the screen. We want to know, how often do you find spear phishing emails in your mail store that you have to investigate and clear? So give me a second here, and I'm going to launch the poll question, and you can answer it on the screen, and we look forward to getting your feedback. The poll's open, so please take a moment to answer how often you see spear phishing emails, and then we'll share the results in a moment. Okay, we see responses coming in, and give it another few seconds here, and then we'll go ahead and close it out. Okay, let me go ahead and close the poll here. And let me share our responses. Okay, so let's see here. Let's see if you don't see that here. Okay, we're having a little... Okay, so we don't see the poll question. Oh, yes, we do. Okay. So, yeah, so it looks like 29% of you are seeing that daily. Another third are basically seeing it several per month. A good percentage of you said, 21% said you're seeing spear phishing emails a couple of weeks. And then the remaining batch had said you see them quarterly. So it's... not that it's good, but it's you see that no one said that they haven't seen any yet. So I think that kind of goes to validate really what we're basically talking about, is that no organization is exempt from a spear phishing email. So the second and last poll question is, want to understand how many hours each month do you spend managing your spear phishing incidents? So let me go ahead and launch that poll question. Okay, and if you take a moment to let us know how often are you spending a few hours a week, 4 to 6 hours, 7 to 10, more than 10 hours, take a moment to vote on that as well. Okay, we'll give it just another short minute here. You know, how many hours each month do you spend having to manage these incidents? Okay, yeah, and hopefully as you're voting, you're reflective of all of your IT team members that have to, so it's a kind of a additive. So if you have 3 or 4 IT folks doing help desk responses for your all your employees, we want to kind of know what does that add up to, and are you tracking that? Okay, so let's go ahead and close that, and we'll share the results as well. Okay, so the majority of you, 62%, said between 0 and 3 hours a month, so that's not too bad. A third of you are saying about 4 to 6 hours, and a small percentage of you about 7 to 10. So no one at this point is on the call has said they have more than 10 hours a month. But obviously, as I'm going to go over next, the ramifications of not dealing with a phishing email could have a serious consequence to the organization. Okay, so let's continue with the presentation then. So just a quick review of what I call phishing by the numbers. And a lot of these stats are from the Verizon Data Breach Investigations Report. They put that out every year, release that at RSA. And so stats that they reported show that 44% of phishing attacks have resulted in a data breach based on the data they've collected. You look at it in the inverse, they'd say that of the data breaches that they're investigating, that 91% of them had started with a phishing attack. And then the anti-phishing working group had reported a 65% increase in attacks year over year. So these are obviously, it's a growing issue. Some additional stats. The Info Security magazine released a report in January of this year, basically confirming that 76% of organizations had experienced phishing attacks last year, and half of the IT professionals that they surveyed said that the rate of attacks had definitely increased from 2016. Additional stats from Verizon, when they look at targeted phishing messages, saying that 30% of those get opened by the target users that they were intended to. So these are very carefully crafted targeted phishing emails sent to specific individuals. And then 12% of those users actually click on the malicious attachments or links. And then also a WebRoot threat report recently said that they were tracking that nearly 1.5 million new phishing sites are created each month. So obviously there's a lot of hacker momentum behind all of this. And then real quick, I had shared some stories before of phishing stories in the news that affects businesses. You probably have all heard of the consumer type of phishing campaigns around tax day, or asking you to open up sign a document or something that looks personal. And so this is just a quick snapshot of the last couple of years where they've made the headlines. Snapchat, Chipotle, Seagate, and these are all organizations where an employee was being phished for financial information, or more importantly, employee W-2 information. And of course, it's tax season now, and if you follow alerts from the IRS and best practices, they're also saying that you should file your taxes early, make sure no one has compromised your Social Security number, your EIN, because the hackers would basically, if they get that information, would file a fraudulent tax return on your behalf. So all of these things are bad, and they affect the businesses. In other stats, you look at the Ponyman Institute, the cost of data breach, and there's various other studies from Intel, and basically one average stat says that an average cost to a business with 1,000 employees could be about $260,000. So cost of data breach incident remediation. And obviously each of these scenarios and a potential cost to your organization will be individually specific. But again, it's something that to keep in mind as you plan your security strategies about how to implement solutions and combat the rise in phishing attacks. The last stats I wanted to share with you, actually this is hot off the presses. The Ponyman Institute just this month released the third annual study on the cyber resilient organizations. And so the stats you see on the screen basically kind of give you a summary of what this new report contains, where of the IT professionals that they surveyed, they said that 77% of them said that they do not have a formal cybersecurity incident response plan that is consistently followed. 57% said the time to resolve an incident has increased. 65% also agreed that the severity of attacks had increased. And then 71% acknowledged staffing levels for IT security folks, that they don't believe that they have the right staffing level to deal with this increase of attacks. So with that, phishing's an issue, and I wanted to introduce Steve Davidson, the IT Director of Mesa Systems, to kind of give you a little bit of perspective of how phishing has affected his organization, and sort of walk through the journey in a Q&A style format for the rest of this webinar on basically what he did to help reduce the impact to Mesa Systems. So Steve, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Don. Good morning.
Good morning. So yeah, real quick, please tell us a little bit about Mesa Systems and what your role is there.
So Mesa Systems, we've been in business since 1981. We are a transportation/logistics company. We're a United Van Line moving company, so we'll move your house, your belongings in your house from one place to another, along with a lot of logistics on the side. I'm the director of IT. I take care of anything technology in our company. So that's kind of my job.
Okay, good. So obviously that keeps you busy. And then so the security threats that you most worry about, what are you most concerned about? And then of course, what solutions do you have in place to deal with that?
So the thing that keeps me up at night is our users. Our users are our weakest link in the company. You know, I've got spam filtering on the way inbound. I then got a Cisco Firepower that's taking a peek at it again, and then it hits my Exchange server that takes a look at those emails again. But ultimately, it's my end user that just clicks on something or does something. That's the thing that keeps me up at night. You know, I don't want to get a BitLocker or any kind of spear phishing. We have been attacked quite heavily with spear phishing. Our CEO sends an email to our CFO saying, hey, transfer money. We get those quite a bit. Luckily, we've gone through that with everybody with quarterly training to help them understand. And we also do our own internal spear phishing to see if they'll catch on and actually click on a link and do something.
Okay. Yeah, and we had talked previously, and you mentioned, can you give me a little bit more detail of other scenarios of some of the other employees that were being phished? I think you mentioned the accounting team. Can you walk me through what that typical attack scenario looks like?
So our billing company, the billing side of our team, I should say, they get emails in that talk about invoices. Please approve this invoice and take a look at it. Even our coordinators that handle the transportation side, they also get these emails that are says an invoice. And no matter how much training we go through with our users, they still open up these emails. They open up the PDF that's attached to it, and then there's a link inside the PDF. And trying to teach them not to click on that link. Because if there's a link inside a PDF, it is phishing. But what happens is our third-party companies that we work with that are sending the invoices, if they get attacked and their system gets compromised, it'll send invoices to us that look legitimate. It's coming from who we're expecting. It feels to us that it's real email, and you have to be fairly smart to take a look at that and go, you know what, I just don't feel comfortable about this. I need help to figure out if this is a true spear phishing or not, or legitimate invoice.
Right. So obviously as the IT director, you're directly involved in all of this. Can you walk me through a little bit about how it affected your IT department in terms of resources used or some of the tasks, the things that you're actually doing to help stop that.
So you mean like when we find a spearfish or we find one that's a questionable email, what do we do to get past and get through it? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. So what typically or previously, what were you having to do to look at that, investigate it, and then eventually figure out if it wasn't good, you had to remediate it? Kind of walk me through that process. So again, the folks on the, go ahead.
So we do a quarterly training where the users watch a video that walks them through what phishing looks like, what spam looks like, what is good and what is bad, and gives them hints of how to look at an email and figure out if it's legitimate or not. And what I found is the more I do these trainings, the more work it makes for our IT department. Because any email comes across and they go, well, this doesn't look legitimate, and so they send it to us. And then we take a peek at it, and back to the invoice one, if we get one that looks like an invoice, we don't open it. We actually take that email, take it offline, we spin up a virtual machine, we load that email into the virtual machine that's completely off our network to verify whether or not that invoice is a legitimate invoice or not. Because even us, as we take a look at this, is it legitimate or not? And to keep our network safe, we feel the best thing is to spin it up offline, take a look at it. This can take 1 to 2 hours, depending on how long. And, also all the training we're doing, everybody's sending these emails to us, and we have to verify, yes, this is good, this is bad. And if we're already in another project, it may take an hour or two to get back to our users to say, yes, this is a good invoice, go ahead and pay it, or, so long, those kind of things.
Okay. And then also, I assume, so it's increased work for you guys, but also, is there some sort of measurable impact, let's say lost productivity to the end users that you're assisting with this? Like what did that look like for the organization?
The lost time that we run into is when the IT department's already on another project and it is a legitimate email that we need to get back to the customer with, and it could be 1, 2, 3 hours before we get back to them. It could be the next day, depending on our workload, whether or not. And so it impacts our customers to have to wait for, maybe they sent over a Word document that we need to verify to get somebody's household good movements to be delivered that day. Well, we're not able to, the IT department's already underwater. We're not able to get back to them, so they can't get back to the customer. So now the ultimate customer is not happy.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that totally makes sense. As a former military professional myself, I understand the importance of, if you're moving household goods, there's tight timelines, that it's not just lost productivity of your finance accounting folks that are providing, the customer-facing services, but it also kind of trickles down to the ultimate service levels that you would be providing to your customers. So definitely an impact there. So I also wanted to mention, well, first real quick, and I just wanted to clarify for everyone. So we're talking about targeted spear phishing attacks. And if you read things online, you'll also hear those referred to as business email compromise, BEC. And so the idea is hackers will do mass phishing campaigns, whether to unleash ransomware, other malware, to trick users, consumers alike, to go to a website and put in credentials to basically steal their credentials so they can go exfiltrate data, at a future date. But the targeted spear phishing attacks, which are getting through gateway spam filters and are evading the endpoint security solutions, are the ones that, like you said, look like a legitimate email coming from a boss or a coworker or a customer, someone that you have a relationship with, that's basically asking them to do something that maybe but the majority of that request might seem reasonable, but maybe there's that little doubt. And so that's the goal is, is it clever enough to trick that individual? to fall for it. So that's basically what we're talking about, the spear phishing. Real quick though, I wanted to mention, so you did roll out security awareness training as a secondary measure, or let's say an added security layer to all of the software and the network security solutions you have in place. Tell me a little bit more about that. So what was the impact of that? It sounds like there's some pros and cons. You're creating awareness, but walk me through a little bit about that, of how did your employees respond, or how do they respond to the security awareness training?
A lot of the employees, it opened their eyes to security awareness training. When you're taking a look at how sneaky some of these guys can be getting inbound emails, and they can send you things that look legitimate. A lot of them didn't realize how impacting it can be and what can happen on the back end just by them not paying attention to what they're doing, from social media such as LinkedIn, emails coming in, clicking on it and infecting their computer. It brought a lot of them, it brought them up to understanding the security problems and what issues we can run into, but at the same time, it now makes them, even though we do the security training and we find that there's still 15% of them, 20% of them that still click on the link, even though they go through the training. We redo the training on them. If they click on the link more than twice on our, internal spear phishing campaign, if they click on it twice, they go through the security training again. So there's just people that don't pay attention to what's going on. The people that do, it makes them so they have to think about it, but then they send all these emails to the IT department, and it makes a lot more work for us. So it's a good thing. But
yeah, well, yeah. So I would agree that having, as you stated at the very beginning, the employees are the weakest link, and so having security awareness training is a good thing, because it creates that awareness and hopefully leads to good practices when managing and reviewing emails. But like you said, the awareness brings questions. They're sending you the emails asking you guys to take a look at it. Basically, they're deferring that ultimate decision, because they know they don't know if it's from the outside or if it's part of a training simulation phishing campaign that you pushed out internally. And then I could also see, I've heard from other IT pros that say, yeah, they believe that even if they have an informal policy and they tell their employees to go ahead and report emails to them, regardless of what that overhead in IT would result in, basically that some would just say, this looks weird to me, I'm just going to delete it. So then on the other hand, I would say, well, then it's not really removing that email from the network. And what if 2 or 3 other individuals got that same email? Then you haven't done anything to clean it off the network. So that's not a good thing either. Interestingly, I wanted to share with everyone this study from Frederick Alexander University, and they reported this at the Black Hat last year. They did a series of studies, and they basically said that 78% participants stated they're aware of this, but not clicking, they said, but they actually did click anyway. So they were incorrectly reporting that they actually clicked on a phishing email. So some of the samples within that study are shown in the bar graph there. So the first study, the results said that 45% of those tested had clicked, but then when they were asked about it after the fact, only 20% reported that they clicked. So that's a 25%, either folks are unaware, or they were afraid, or just flat out denied that they clicked on an email. The second study, again, 25% clicked, but only 16 reported that they clicked. So it's interesting. Again, it's good to have security awareness training, but it's not the end all. So, and that brings us to the kind of like, what additional layer did you implement? And so, so now I'd like to move into discussion about our EdgeWave threat test, and I'd like you to share your experiences with how that augmented everything else that you've got going, all your existing security layers and the security awareness training. So if you could kind of tell me, so, why did you choose to implement threat test, and how do you feel it's helping, to beef up the security at Mesa Systems?
So for the reason we implemented threat test was to take the load off the IT department and to give our users a quicker response on whether the email is legitimate or not. So it's an Outlook plugin, very simple to install. We installed it into our system. At that point, the users could questionable email, select the email, click on the button inside of Outlook and say, hey, is this legitimate email or not? And within about 15 minutes, they would get a response that would say it's legitimate or it is a threat, remove it. This took a lot of load off our back where we're not spinning it offline anymore. We don't have to sit there and hold everybody's hand as we go through it, and we get a quicker response to our customers based on using the ThreatTest application.
Okay, good. I appreciate that. And real quick for the folks on the call, just want to do a quick review of ThreatTest. So again, for those of you that have not heard of it, ThreatTest is an automated phishing email incident response service that EdgeWave manages. So it empowers the employees, just as Steve had said, to report the suspicious emails with a click of a button right in Outlook, and it delivers a real-time threat investigation and response. And basically, from the Outlook, so there's a ThreatTest button on the Outlook ribbon, and there's also an EdgeWave ThreatTest folder. And so anytime the employee clicks that, it quarantines the email to the folder, and then it sends it off to EdgeWave. We run it through our unique hybrid detection. We believe it's the next generation way of analyzing these things, where it goes through our artificial intelligence, or AI layer, and then it goes to a live security analyst on our team in our security operations center to review and assign a disposition to it. And so the screenshots on the right show samples of the emails that the end user would get, basically an acknowledgement that they've submitted an email to us, and then within a couple of minutes, depending on of how much time the security analyst needs to review that, but usually less than 15 minutes, they're getting a response back saying this email is good, it's safe, proceed with caution, or whoa, this email is bad. And of course, if it's bad, it automatically removes it from the system, and it's gone. They don't have to worry about it. So that's the simple solution for businesses to empower the end users, to help make them part of the solution and not the weakest link. And of course, we know that IT professionals do not want to give up, not so much give up control, but they want to make sure that they can understand what's going on in the network. So with ThreatTest, there's increased visibility for IT. What you're seeing now are samples of organizational-wide stats from the administration portal, which is where you deploy ThreatTest to the mailboxes in your organization. So it shows organizational-wide statistics, who's being phished, who's submitting, kind of a summary of the emails that were submitted, which ones were actually malicious. Some may just be spam, but somehow it got through. So, we'll report back on all of those things. But again, this is an Outlook plugin. It works with Exchange 2013 or newer, works on Office 365, OWA, and then even if your end users are on Mac or a mobile device, Android or iOS, the Outlook app, which is the mobile version of Outlook, they'll be able to report their suspicious emails through ThreatTest through that method as well. So that's kind of an overview of what that is. Basically, that's kind of what we wanted to share with everyone today. So now we'd like to move to the kind of wrap up and Q&A. So if anyone on the call has questions for Steve, or if they also wanted to just post a story and share an example of how a phishing email, either almost got them or something that, that they feel comfortable in sharing, we'd love to see that. And we're reviewing the chats right now, and if there's anything interesting like that to share, we'll definitely tell that. But in the meantime, while we're reviewing that, so the case study, written case study that covers what Steve had just went over is on the link there in the edgewave.com resource section. If you think that this solution might be something you're interested in, we could set you up with our sales engineer to do a quick 15 or 20-minute demo of the product. And there's a requested demo link on our website as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Chu, and she'll moderate Q&A for either myself or Steve.
Great, thank you. So we've got a few questions already. And so one of the questions is, how often, this is for Steve, how often do you phish your company? So as you talked about security awareness training, how often do you do any simulated phishing attacks to your own organization?
It really, we seem to go based on what's big and hot right now. Like right now is the IRS, so we'll go after that. So I'll do 1 or 2 this month. When Star Wars came out, that was one that I went after because, you know, get free tickets to the new Star Wars movie. It just depends on kind of what's going on right now. You know, if there's a big airplane crash or something like that, people use those for, and it sounds really bad, but they use those for email phishing, internal phishing. And the reason is you're trying to hit that social media side of things. So to answer your question, once per month, sometimes twice per month, we try to do an internal email phish.
Great. And then related to that, what system are you using to send them out?
It's a third-party company that we use.
Okay, great. We have a question around, does ThreatTest work with Office 365? I can answer this one. Yes, it does. And will it remove the messages? So ThreatTest will remove. So once the individual, the end user, clicks the button, reports the suspicious email, our back end is basically our human review process as well as the automated machine learning. So it goes through layers of our own security technology as well as our own human review. So we actually have 24/7 real-time human analysts who will go through and look at these suspicious emails. Once the disposition is sent back to the end user, they'll understand whether it's good, bad, and the malicious ones are actually automatically removed from the email server. So yes, we do remove that automatically. And it is compatible with Office 365, Exchange, OWA, and then Outlook app on mobile as well, and Mac. Let's see. What person? Oh, here we go. Hold on. Okay, we've got another question coming in right now. Let's see. What percentage of the emails being reported for suspicious activity are good or bad? That's a good question. Are you, if we're looking at across organizations, you know, I would say the majority of the ones, if not anywhere from 50 to 60% of the ones that are submitted are legitimately bad, malicious emails. It depends on the organization. It varies. So, Steve, I don't know if you want to share any statistics about what your organization has experienced, but across what we've seen from our other customers across the board, it can be anywhere from 50% on more. Depends on, how they're using the system. Some get to the point where, if it's really the tip of the spear that they're submitting, then, it can be a higher percentage than that.
It depends on the user.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree that, especially if an organization like Mesa has rolled out security awareness training, then in theory, the users are a little bit more sophisticated or at least a little more in tune to look for that. So their response may be different than an organization that doesn't have any sort of training, whether it's in-house or through a third party. And obviously the users would have, it all starts with them to say, hey, this doesn't look right. I'm gonna, either test it or trust it, basically. So we're offering them an opportunity to test it, send it to us, and we'll tell you if it's good or bad.
So we have a question here around, will ThreatTest learn and inform all users of phishing emails? So what ThreatTest will do is that it will learn through our machine learning you know, what has been submitted, what's malicious, and then we will actually incorporate that into our security stack, and then, you know, all the organizations using ThreatTest will benefit from that learning. What it doesn't do is it doesn't just alert end users every time we think there's a phishing attack. What it does is it actually creates a log listing as well as reporting for the IT administrator to go through to look at what type of, categorically, what type of attacks they've seen, both from kind of a visual perspective and then also a list of the users that have submitted, and then what particular attacks that they've seen from that perspective.
And then too, also don't forget the end users can also see their individual stats for what they've reported, of what percentage were good or bad. That's in the plug-in. That's an expandable window pane in Outlook. And they would be able to see their own stats as well.
That's correct. I've got another question. Is ThreatTest pricing based on how many times the system is used? So it is actually based on the number of mailboxes or end users that are supported by month. So similar to, I think, what email security companies price today, we have the similar model on that as well. The idea is you want to protect your whole organization and not let a phishing email threat go through one individual or not. So we've had questions on, you know, do we want to do partial support of ThreatTest in the organization, and ideally that's not what you want to do. You want to roll it across the whole organization so that if a phishing email goes to one individual, and then, you know, it's probably gone to a few others as well. So we want to make sure we've covered the whole group. Got another question here. How does this differ from when we send something spam at edgewave.com? Okay, good question on that one. For some of the participants on the webinar who actually are familiar with our ePrism email security solution, how this is different, and Steve, you know this from experience as well, is that the report spam button was a one-way reporting tool. This is pretty common to what you see in the market today. I think a lot of the leading competitors out in the market and providers of email security have some type of avoiding spam. It does absolutely no mitigation or remediation. All it does is report it and feeds the back-end threat intelligence of that organization. The difference with ThreatTest is an email incident response solution whereby we not only take the intelligence, but we flip that around and we actually mitigate the threat in your inbox by removing it from the inbox and moving it to an isolated folder. Then we also remediate that by determining whether it's malicious or not, and if it's malicious, we actually remove it from the inbox and the email server for you. So this is all automated, therefore you don't have to do anything, and neither does your end user. Any other comments, Steve, you wanna share in terms of that experience?
Well, it takes the load off. It allows the user to resolve their own issues. So I have users that will not pick up the phone and call IT. They just feel like they're being stupid if they do that. By having the button inside of Outlook, it allows them to resolve their own issue at their comfort level. So it helps them give a little more power, a little more ammo in their gun or whatever, take care of their issue kind of thing.
Right, you know, that's a good point, Steve, because I think, you know, one of the things that you mentioned earlier too is that, you know, once your end users are more aware, especially if you roll out more security awareness training, and a lot of organizations are really starting to do that if they haven't already, you know, there's this fear of looking stupid, right? You start reaching out to IT, and then all of a sudden, you know, you're admitting that the training didn't work. So, you know, I could see that happen as you make them more aware of their own ability to, you know, report or not report to you. So, okay. Let's see. Any other questions? There was a question on, are you using an in-house system? But obviously we answered that question already. And then, let's see, any other questions coming through?
If there's anything we missed, we can do a one-to-one follow-up. after the call.
That's correct. Steve, you know, you talked about, you know, the benefits from a time savings. Ultimately, that translates into a cost perspective, anywhere from, you know, it could be, I think, like an hour to resolve something. Can you share with us again, kind of, when you did get some of these malicious emails, what did you have to go through to kind of resolve that in-house? I know you and I and Don have all talked around, you know, having to create a isolated system, but maybe share that process again.
Well, I have a computer that sits next to my desk that's not a part of our network at all. And what we do is we'd actually spin that guy up from a fresh virtual machine with Outlook and everything on it. And we'd copy the email or the attachment down to a USB stick that's specific for this machine. And we plug it into that machine, we load it, and we launch that file to see what it looked like, to see if it was malicious or not. You know, we use the ePrism for our email coming inbound, but emails are getting more and more sophisticated that they look like legitimate, and it passes through that and still comes into our system. It's just that I think I answered your question. Sorry.
Yeah, and Steve, that's something that, you know, we've had conversations with other businesses and maybe who were not or are not using our ePrism email security solution. They might be using a competitor, but they realize that, you know, nothing's 100%, so they want that added layer for all the benefits and the you know, reduction in IT resources and so forth. They have that to kind of augment that. So definitely, it's you know, it has a specific purpose, and we believe it is helping to close the phishing gap at the endpoint, where other current solutions there isn't really something unique and hybrid. So that's kind of what I'm thinking of this as a next generation type of a solution. So.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining our webinar today. And as you know, we always have a monthly series. Keep an eye out for our next one coming up in April. And Steve, thank you so much for being our featured guest today. We appreciate your time and sharing your story with everyone on the call today. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you.